All right, V. So let's get right into self-care from a child-free perspective, and how it plays a significant part in mental health. So, is there something you want to kick off the conversation specifically with on how you have incorporated self-care into your mental health and wellness, keeping in mind that we all have different points of view of what self-care is? So you can be as specific as you want, as vague as you want, but knowing you, we'll be specific.
Yeah, I'm big on specificity. So, for me, I was going through a bit of a mental health crisis a little bit earlier this year. There was a lot going on, and it was hard for me to just do basic self care. And I think a lot of people don't talk about that, especially depending upon what you're going through, because you're already having to deal with whatever is stressing you out or causing you this issue.
Hmm.
Then, on top of that, you're expected to take care of yourself on a regular basis. And it can be hard because some days you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to go outside, you don't want to talk to anybody. And then I got to brush my teeth, I got to shower on top of it.
So
Some
we're
of it,
talking like basic self-care, because I was gonna say, what do
yeah,
you mean by basic? Because I think everybody has a different understanding of what basic would even mean. So it's just standard hygiene almost, it sounds like.
yeah, just getting out of bed,
Hmm.
brushing your teeth, doing your facial skincare routine, showering, changing clothes, washing clothes.
Mm.
That can feel like a mountain of stuff to do when you are trying to get a hold on your mental health. The
Yeah.
worse it is, sometimes the more the self care goes by the wayside. And it was that way for me. It was hard most days just to brush my teeth and do just routine. Anything
Hmm.
outside of that, usually it's like, I'm good. And some days I would just have to compartmentalize it. Some days, if I wasn't feeling up to anything, I would say, well, at least let me brush my teeth. If
Yeah.
I have enough mental fortitude, I'll go ahead and take a shower too. And so it's a big deal. Like I said, a lot of people don't discuss it because they feel embarrassed about it.
Hmm.
It's like nobody knows that I haven't showered for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I've heard people talk about it. I haven't showered for a week. I just can't get out of bed. I just can't do anything. So it's like I said, it's a big deal, and it can be hard to take care of yourself and your mental health. Now, of course, with meds and therapy, that kind of brings you around.
Hmm.
And so, as my mental health improved, obviously, so did my self care, and I'm in a very good place now, and I'm doing basic plus beyond self care. I'm feeling more back to myself,
Yeah.
but as I said, people don't talk about it because there's embarrassment and shame
Hmm.
around not even being able to do just the basic stuff, let alone going to get your nails done or something like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Those moments for a second when you do, at least push yourself to do the basics, and even how from a child-free perspective, that you're right, it doesn't get talked enough about, because there is that assumption from the outside of the community that, oh well, what are your problems? You have all the time to do self-care, you have all the time to do the basics, right? But in
Hmm.
reality, when we go through those moments, and also too, I've often found, like, when I've been low, I am very grateful that I for my child-free choice, because sometimes, even before we get to the point of like propelling yourself forward, just giving your space to maybe not do anything. Maybe let's start with that, or talk about that for a second. Like, when it is just you, and I mean, even if you are partnered, but when you're not caring for a little person or a little kid, or you're not caring for a little infant or whatever, you can give yourself space to not do anything if you really feel like you can't do anything. Do you think that's important, for one, just to give yourself space to kind of be there? I mean, not forever, but
Hmm.
for a time. What do you
That
think
is
about that?
that's super important. It is different being child free versus being parented and going through a mental health crisis, or even parented and partnered, because I've learned partners may not give you that space, especially if you're the main caretaker.
Right.
They may not give you the space to fall apart
Mm-hmm.
because they're depending on you to take care of them and yourself. And if you have a child, also the child and the household and everything else.
Yeah.
So a lot of partners will not give you that space. So just being by myself and having that moment to fall apart helped so much.
Mm-hmm.
Just again, I was at a very low point, but at least I was allowed to go through it and by myself and not have to worry about when are you making dinner. Oh, the
Right.
kids diaper needs changing, the kids need to go to soccer, what are you doing for me, I want to have sex, can you do something.
Yes.
It is so important to be able to have that moment by yourself and realize what you need to do to get through the next moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when going through that, my thing was just taking moment to moment. Like some moments I'd be fine, other moments I'd be low. And that was just throughout the course of a 24-hour period.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful that I was able to just fall apart, have a crisis, whatever, by myself, and not have it feel like it was performative because other
Yes.
people were in my space.
Yeah.
Because I've done that too. I was in an Airbnb and I was still kind of going through my moment. This was like back in May.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever self-care I did, I felt it was performative because other people were in there and I just couldn't not do anything.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't have to interact with people because there were other guests,
Mm-hmm.
but there's the host and then there are other people and you're going to eventually come in contact with these people. I did stay in my role more than most of the time,
Yeah.
but as I said, my self-care at that point felt very performative, like, oh, I better do this, I better do that because there are people here.
Mm-hmm.
But given the space to just not be strong, which that's another whole
Oh my gosh,
conversation.
that is a whole another day conversation, because I mean I've heard you
Whew.
say plenty of times that resonates with me, is like when you are perceived as strong, because we are strong, but that does not mean we are strong 24/7, nor should we be. But when it's almost expected, that's the worst.
That is,
You
and
know?
again, that goes with having a partner or a child, and just being a black woman specifically. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how it is with other women of color, but black women are definitely perceived as strong and you can get through it and figure it out and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's more to it. It's so much more to it than that. So I'm grateful I had that space by myself just to do what I needed to do to get through the mental health crisis. And now I'm so much at a better place now.
Mm-hmm.
I really am. Like a few months ago, I was real bad off
Yeah.
mentally and health and self care wise. It was bad, and I know that. Complete polar opposite right now.
Yeah.
And so it took a lot to get to this point.
Yeah. So
And sometimes
let's
people
talk.
take it for granted.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so let's talk about so we've talked about rock bottom, and then still in the mental health, um keeping mental health in mind. What kind of got you up slowly little by little? Like what would you say that you did specifically? Let's say, okay, you're able to do the basics. What kind of got you to that point doing the basics? And then what did you do after you felt you could do the basic? What came next? And then how did that play a part into, feeling, I'm not going to say stronger, but you could, you've, there is more hope, I guess, lack of a better term.
No, I completely understand what you mean. Um, so I think when I look back on it, as I said, it may have been a little performative because my former friend stayed with me for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt performative again, like, okay, my friend is here.
Yeah.
I gotta,
But is maybe that a good thing in a
ah,
weird way? Like, fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
would that, okay, because it
yeah,
can't be like, sometimes you have to do that.
yeah. Especially
You
if
know,
there's somebody else present.
yeah. I mean,
So,
you want it to be genuine at some point, but maybe there is a silver lining with having to be performative for a time anyway.
so I think that's kind of what I'm gonna just say. Maybe things started to change when my dad died, and I had to go to Indiana and plan his funeral. I
Mm.
had to get out of my head. I
Right.
almost didn't make it to the airport, but I said I gotta go.
Okay.
And I think at that point things started spiraling upward because I had a mission that was greater than myself.
Right.
I have to take a shower. I have to bathe. I have to be presentable to get to the airport
Hmm.
and be at the airport and stand in line and be on the plane. If I'm not okay or together on the plane, they're going to kick me off.
Right.
So I think that's when it started.
Okay.
And then I had to stay at somebody else's house for a couple of nights. Definitely have to at least pretend whatever, like I had a semblance of self care, like
Hmm.
my mental health was somewhat together in somebody else's house.
Right.
And then I think that's when it started to spiral upward. Then I came back to my place, and my former friend, stayed with me. And so I had to scrub the tub and keep the bathroom clean. And that's, and I just started to have to do the basics again.
Hmm.
And so I think that's when things kind of started going a little bit better, moment by moment. And then I moved out of my place and things ramped up. And I was in the Airbnb, and that was another situation. So these situations that led me and propelled me to where I am today, which is now living in Maryland.
Hmm.
And on the other side of it now, which is even washing hair is basic, but maintaining it and continuing the routine, that's beyond.
Yeah.
So beyond is doing that, you
Hmm.
know, eventually going to get my hair done because it's in my natural state right now.
Mine too.
You were born with baby blue hair.
I was.
Wow, I love it.
Great,
um,
great, great grandparents somewhere down the line.
oh yeah, definitely. So it started with the hair maintenance, getting wax, going to get a manicure and pedicure,
Hmm.
wearing perfume, buying clothes, just taking more stock in my appearance too. So that's
Yeah.
beyond the basics. And that's
Yeah.
where I am now.
Okay.
So it took quite a few events and months to get back to this place
Yeah.
and working out too. I've
Yeah.
started that again. I've been doing that for the past 3 weeks or so.
So I mean, even, and there's a lot that we're gonna get into,
Hmm.
later in the conversation, but just recognizing that we get to choose whether we take care of ourselves or not. But even just listening to what you've shared, it's like, this is why you do self-care is important, because you could easily stay, I'm not gonna say that you want to, but you could stay in that low space,
Hmm.
and then yes, sometimes life makes you take action where it's just to like get up, okay, I have something to deal with. And this is where some people with kids, or this is where let me put it this way, this is where pronatalism likes to throw out, well, if you had a child, you would have something beyond yourself that would keep you going, because we hear that from time to time. People go, well, it was my kid, it's my kids that give me purpose. Well, look,
Hmm.
when you know that you don't want to be a parent, we're not going to throw children into the mix to give us a purpose. Life kind of pushes you where you need to go
Yeah.
sometimes, and you still get to decide whether or not you're going to step up and do something about it. But I think, because, and why, really why we're having this conversation is because people tend to look at child free people and think, well, you guys, all you do is spend time on yourself. It's selfish, you're just putting your needs first. But anyone who's going through a low time, whether you have kids or not, you the way to cope is to make yourself feel better somehow, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And everyone's going to make that decision to do it at some point. even if it's just brushing your teeth, which is not just, that's a big deal, So,
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight, like, this is, again, even if people with kids are listening or watching this, it's like, do something for yourself. You need to, because it will move you forward. It will push you through. It's not just for when things are going great and you want to get a manicure. It's like for when it feels so bleak, you just don't know what to do, but you want to do something. And I think, so what do you think about, like, when we are in, and I'm not speaking to you specifically, but when we are in a very low, kind of desperate state, oh damn, my question just left. I hate it when that happens. I had the question right there. Just trying to set it up. That's called editing. It was about choosing yourself first. Anyone, like, just it's important to choose yourself first.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I was going to ask. It was something along that line, but I don't remember how I was going to word it. Anyway. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add to that part? We've got about 4 minutes left in this particular section. No, that's not true. We got longer than that. Okay. My timing is off. I can't tell time. Because I wanted to segue to grief, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
Okay.
So, okay, just thinking. Oh. Do you mind, under this segment we talk about work for a second?
Yeah, definitely.
Like working, because it's not really going to fit in anywhere in the other parts of the conversation. Okay, I'll ask a question. So during that time before you got to Maryland, you were working, or you were career-wise, you were going through a change, or what was that like for you?
I was going through a major transition. So I started a job last August. It turned out to be a phone job.
Okay.
I don't do well with answering phones and customer service. So I kept my options open, kept submitting resumes, and interestingly enough, I finally got an offer for a job working from home, and I would be doing the actual same exact job, except I wouldn't have to answer phones. And so I would also be getting paid more. It was going to be a temporary job, so for about 6 months, but of course the caveat is that if they liked you enough, they would hire you on. And so I accepted the job offer and I gave my 2-week notice, and there was a little bit of time before the new job started. So the new job started. They finally sent my equipment. I was having a meeting with one of the supervisor. I dozed off, and I think that kind of, because we were just sitting for a time. We were just sitting.
Oh, how is that, like, relevant to someone, like, working? I don't get it. Why would they just make you do that?
They weren't. I don't know if it was. I think it was because I didn't have my equipment. So the manager, the supervisor, wanted to meet with me.
Okay, but
interestingly enough, my equipment came later that day, but she still wanted to show face.
Okay.
So I joined the Zoom meeting or whatever it was, and we're just sitting there, and I was going over some type of policies and procedures. Standard of policies is what they call them, SOPs. And I was just sitting there and reading, and I just got sleepy. The supervisor didn't like that. And I've been told a lot of people wouldn't like that. And so I thought, okay. And so the supervisor, she just brought it to my attention, and she said, do what you have to do to just monitor your sleep habits so that won't happen again. It was just that one time, and, it didn't happen again.
Yeah.
It didn't happen again because the next day I started training, and I guess they decided, or she decided, that they didn't want to continue.
Okay.
And so while I was training, I saw the trainer's screen, and I saw the email pop up that said, "We don't think she's going to work out."
And I'm not Zoom for you. Okay. Oh my God.
Or I think it was Microsoft Teams, but like I said, The trainer was sharing her screen and she didn't realize that I saw this pop
Yeah.
up and she didn't
Okay.
mention it and I didn't mention it. And
Okay.
so I'm thinking, this is not good.
Okay.
And the agency called and said, we don't know if it's going to work out. Let me just see if I can talk to the supervisor and see
Yeah.
what's going on. And eventually the agency called back and said, sorry, they don't want you to continue.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. We'll pause there for a second because I mean I can think of not that exact scenario, but moments where I was like, okay, well this is obviously not working. So let's talk about what we do in those moments, bringing self care into that. So something that seemed promising doesn't work out. It's unexpected, and you're like, shit. Okay. So what do we do? How do we get through those? Because these are like the tiny things that they're actually kind of a big deal, but this is like I think in my 20s I would have just gone into I did go into a crisis for something like this where I'm like I have no idea what to do. I was like banking my entire future on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen. How do we get through that moment in a way where we feel okay? Or maybe okay is not even the right way of putting it, but what do you do
Ooh, well,
after you take a long nap? Because that's the first thing I do is I nap because I don't know what to
I
do, and then I go, okay,
I
it's going to
don't
Texas.
I don't think I napped. I think I was in a state of shock. Like
Mm,
it didn't even last a day and a half. You didn't
right.
even give they didn't even give me a chance or the wherewithal. And because it was rather unprofessional what happened, I figured maybe it's for the best.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was just odd how everything happened.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't for the best anyway. So again, I was kind of in shock. I had to just pivot and figure out, well, what am I going to do now? I'm unemployed. I don't like to be unemployed. So there's a little
Yeah.
panic, there's a little shock. I think I just did kind of chill out for the rest of the day because it was a lot,
Mm-hmm.
especially when the agency was saying, oh, you're not fired, everything's going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, they decided not to continue. But you
Oh.
were just telling me everything would be okay. I
Mm-hmm.
specifically remember telling or asking the agent, well, is everything okay? Are they going to fire me? I'm worried here. And plus what happened was really unprofessional. And she said, oh,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. Let me talk to them and everything will be okay. So, after I got the news that everything would not be okay, as I said, I was in shock. I had to deal with the feelings and I had to figure out my next move.
Yeah. So when you
And
said you just chilled, like, do you just do nothing? We have a thunderstorm. I don't know if you can hear that, but what do you do? Because for me, I want to figure everything out, which is the opposite of chilling. Which I keep telling myself, don't make any rash moves when you're in a panic.
mhm.
Never do that. I do it sometimes anyway, but what does that mean for you? Like, what do you do?
So for me, not I'm doing my best not to think about what happened.
Okay.
I'm taking time out, just whatever that means, whether it means vegging out completely,
Mm-hmm.
trying to put it out of my mind, watching videos, something funny, getting something good to eat, maybe talking to a friend about it. I did talk to everybody about it.
Yeah.
And they were like, what happened?
Yeah.
Verbalizing it. Um, I just took time away from that moment to decompress. I had to
Mm,
decompress from what
yeah.
happened because I was in shock. And again, I had to figure out my next move. So I needed time away from that and even just to go into super action mode, like you said you usually do. Like, okay, I got to find another job. I got to find another job.
Yeah.
It's like, let me take a day or two, then I'll get back on it because it's a lot.
It's space. I mean, really, what it
Yeah.
comes down to is like, when you need personal space from somebody, if you've had an argument or whatever, it's like for me, I'm like, give me all this space, we'll figure it out. But I personally, I struggle with giving space around the situation because when that happens or something significant, like, maybe not the exact same scenario, but when something happens where I immediately go into fight mode. How can I fix this? What can I do?
Hmm.
My imagination is just going completely wild. Nothing feels right, but I want to come up with a solution so I could sleep. the hardest thing for me is to step back and give it space, because you either look at, you can reframe what happened. You can, as I get older, it's easier to kind of see the silver lining faster. Not all the time, but after surgery, once the medication wears off, you go, okay, I see there's some perfect.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, this hurts.
But just stepping back for a second, like you said, it would take a day to just, decompress, whatever. And I think, again, having never been a parent, but just realizing how much space we do have emotionally, maybe not even physically, but just emotionally, to deal with something like this when it's unexpected and, not an ideal outcome. And then just being able to go, wait, let me think about this for a second. Nobody needs me. Okay. and I think that needs to be, I'm going to say, celebrated almost, because look, I mean, and we're going to get into this in the next section, but when things really hit the fan and you go through some really, really tough times, what I'm so grateful for being a child-free person is the emotional space, because there's already a lot going on up here. There's things I want to accomplish, but just even getting through daily life, and when going through a low moment and not knowing what to do next, which is the worst feeling for me. If I can't see a plan, if I don't have one, it's just the worst. And that's when I need space, and I'm so glad that I have it. And as I get older, I appreciate that even more. Like in my 20s, I really took it for granted. I felt like a constant state of panic. If I didn't know what to do next, I'd figure it out, but just throwing too many things at the wall, hoping something would stick. So it's good to acknowledge that we do get to have that emotional space. We can, or make an effort to have it, I should say.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to just breathe and
Yeah.
not have other stuff coming at you. I can only imagine if I were still married or partnered or had a child and all of that. I don't know how I would have handled it. I may have imploded, and some people do implode.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because
they don't have that time, that space to just woosah.
Right. Well, and even thinking about our personalities and how we handle things, like I'm sure that we would figure it out, but there would be a massive sacrifice. And I think, I'm just going to speculate, the sacrifice would be on us personally, because that's as females in the mother role, which is why I was adamant, like, I don't want that experience, because I felt that's what I would have to go through life that way. I would have to go through life putting my feelings and kind of suffocating myself. And I'm just going to speak just for me, because I need to express myself, and I need to just get it all out, because the minute I internalize stuff, things go wrong. Things go really wrong. And I've been there, and I don't want to, took a long time to work through that. So, it's just, it's nice to at least be able to acknowledge that we have space.
Yes.
To work through what we need to. And again, that's something that I really want to highlight in these conversations, is like, honor yourself, you know? And for anyone that feels like child-free people don't have problems, or that we're selfish for not, and this is maybe not necessarily the reasons why we don't have kids, but it's a benefit of, and it's not to say that like people with kids can't do self-care, but let's be real. How much emotional energy or space do you have to work through some really dark stuff that we have to go through in life?
Especially if you have to care for a kid.
Yeah.
Because they're taking up your time and energy. And it's like, okay, I just need 10 minutes to myself. The baby's crying, or the kids are hungry.
Yeah.
Especially if you are raising or parenting by yourself. That's a whole other thing as well.
Yeah. And also too, and just to wrap up this section, but I was thinking about how, what distractions, like I was thinking about how people use things as a distraction. Look, distractions are great. It's nice to have a distraction from time to time. But when we go through something really, really heavy, and it's I mean, again, coping mechanisms, but like I have had a history of burying things. I had a career to distract me, or I've had ambition to distract me, or a person, sex to distract me. Let's put it that way. Things like that, where you're like, all right, I'm busy, I'm good. This is making me feel good. I'll go that direction without tackling what's going on underneath. That resurfaces, and then it's back to square one again. So I again will be blunt about this. I feel that having kids is a distraction, not for everybody, but it's I see it as a good acceptable excuse to not deal with things, which is why I always felt like, personally, I was the result of so much inherited family trauma that why would I pass it on? I'll just deal with it, live a good life, and die, and not pass it on any further. But that's how I kind of view kids, because it's just been, okay, we have all these things to work through. There's no time to work through because now we have to have kids, and then they have to have kids, and then they have to have kids. And it's just like this massive chain of, well, now here's me.
Right. And
And
a lot of people use babies and children as bandages. That
yeah,
doesn't work.
no. And I think I don't feel bad saying that. Again, I'm not gonna, you don't want to be mean about it, but again, part of why we want to have these conversations is just to put it out there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're not the only two child-free people who think that way. We've had enough
Definitely not.
conversations to know, like that's the thing, when you have time to look at everything and your options, and you go, wait, there's things we go through that are not fun to deal with, that are hard to deal with, and we'll always be dealing with. But I just, just to at least make the effort to look at it and say, okay, what can we do and how can we move forward with things? Because I mean, you're in a good place now too, so
Yeah,
it is
definitely.
possible. And it's just important to even just go through the basics, just however you get there, you know
Agreed.
but also let ourselves fall apart from time to time too.
It's so important to be able to be in a space to allow ourselves to fall apart, where
Hmm.
we can just lean into the feelings, get through it, acknowledge it, and then move on. Because if we don't have that space, like you said, it will resurface in one way or
Yeah,
another.
I like how you said lean into it. That's only like the last few years I've really started to understand, or and even admit that it's okay, because those feelings suck.
They do. And they do
When you're
make you feel bad.
they do, yeah. And you're like sitting on your floor, and you're like, or I'm sitting on my floor with my back against the wall in like spare bedroom going, okay, I hate being here. Like, not in the house, but I hate being in this space.
In this
But
space. Yeah.
there's nothing, I know now, there's nothing I can do that is going to fix it unless I lean into it and acknowledge it is here. And I remember going through that just before the pandemic. Well, the pandemic existed, but it hadn't quite, nobody knew what was happening. It was like, it's almost like I mean, there was other things I was going through at the time, so it wasn't the pandemic, but it was like I felt that sheer panic. And I've never had anxiety. Like, anxiety I don't suffer from. I've been anxious before, but I never had an anxiety attack before. And I
Hmm.
remember going through that, and it hurt, and I recognized that that's what was happening. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be here. I don't want to experience this. I need a plan. And I couldn't. So that was hard, and that was hard to go through. And I appreciate it now because it gave me some more tools to use. But it sucks, it hurts, and it's just like the worst feeling. And so just to be able to sit and go, you know what, this is happening, and then at the end I'm like, all right, I'm still alive. Now what?
Yeah. You, you
Now what?
you gotta go through it to get through it and
Hmm.
not stuff it down. Because I tried
Yeah.
to stuff it down too, and that only resulted in me gaining more weight and now having to completely revamp all the hard work that I had done previously. So
Right.
stuffing it down really doesn't work either.
Yeah.
Those distractions are very temporary, and people think, well, if I keep doing it, then I'll feel good and I'll feel good. Eventually, you're going to hit the wall.
Yeah.
And you're going to come to that, well, now what do I do moment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll end there. We're not going to solve all the problems. I think that's an interesting way to end it, because it'll be going, what? We'll make people wait. Okay, so we're going to segment into